Ohio grand jury has decided there will be no charges for the fatal shooting of Tamir Rice, the youngest victim in a spate of well-known police killings of unarmed African Americans. On November 22, 2014, Tamir Rice was playing with a toy pellet gun in a Cleveland park. A 911 caller reported seeing him with a weapon, but noted it was probably fake and that the individual was probably a juvenile. That information was not relayed to the responding officers. But family members and their supporters say that miscommunication did not justify what followed. After their police cruiser pulled up in front of Tamir, Officer Timothy Loehmann shot him within 2 seconds. Neither Loehmann nor his partner, Frank Garmback, administered any first aid to try to save Tamir's life. They then tackled Tamir's 14-year-old sister to the ground as she ran to her brother's side, handcuffed her, and put her in their cruiser as the boy lay dying on the ground. Tamir died of his injuries the following day. After a more than year-long investigation, the grand jury returned a decision Monday not to indict. The county prosecutor, Timothy McGinty, said he had recommended that outcome, citing a perfect storm of human error and miscommunication.
Simply put, given this perfect storm of human error, mistakes, and miscommunications by all involved that day, the evidence did not indicate criminal conduct by police. The police officers and the police department must live with the awful knowledge that their mistakes, however unintentional, led to the death of a 12-year-old boy. So will the police radio personnel, whose errors were substantial contributing factors to the tragic outcome. They passed along detailed information about the guy outside the rec center, his clothing, including the colors of his coat and his camouflage hat, but not the all-important facts that the 911 caller said the gunman was probably, quote, probably a juvenile, and the gun may not be real. Had the officers been aware of these qualifiers, the training officer who was driving might have approached the scene with less urgency.
Cleveland protesters reacted to the decision with a somber gathering at the park where Tamir Rice was killed. In a statement, Tamir Rice's mother, Samaria Rice, said, quote, "In a time in which a non-indictment for 2 police officers who've killed an unarmed black child is business as usual, we mourn for Tamir and for all the black people who've been killed by the police without justice. In our view, this process demonstrates that race is still an extremely troubling and serious problem in our country and the criminal justice system. I don't want my child to have died for nothing, and I refuse to let his legacy or his name be ignored. We'll continue to fight for justice for him and for all families who must live with the pain that we live with." Samaria Rice also questioned the prosecutor's motives, saying, quote, "McGinty deliberately sabotaged the case, never advocating for my son and acting instead like the police officer's defense attorney." Attorneys for the Rice family have asked the Justice Department to intervene over what they call extreme bias and a charade process aimed at exonerating the officers. The Rice family has filed a federal civil rights and wrongful death lawsuit against Cleveland and the 2 officers involved. The Justice Department's Civil Rights Division also continues its own probe. The prosecution faced criticism for an unusual grand jury process that dragged on for more than a year, saw the officers testify without cross-examination, and called so-called independent experts who the Rice family says were cherry-picked to encourage a non-indictment. Other experts did find probable cause, including a municipal court judge who recommended Officer Loehmann be charged with murder, manslaughter, and reckless homicide. Questions have also been raised about Officer Loehmann's past. Loehmann had been deemed unfit for police service in 2012 when he worked in the suburb of Independence. A letter from a superior specifically criticizes Loehmann's performance in firearms training, saying he could not follow simple directions, could not communicate clear thoughts nor recollections, and his handgun performance was dismal, said his superior. Meanwhile, Officer Frank Garmback, the officer who was driving the police cruiser, also has a troubled history. Cleveland reportedly paid out $100,000 in 2014 to a Cleveland resident named Tamala Eaton to settle an excessive force lawsuit brought against Garmback. The settlement stemmed from a 2010 confrontation in which Eaton said Garmback, quote, rushed her, placed her in a chokehold, tackled her to the ground, twisted her wrist, and began hitting her body. At Monday's news conference, Assistant Prosecutor Matthew Mayer explained the non-indictment by stressing that the toy gun Tamir Rice was holding looked real.
Tamir had gotten the gun from a friend who told investigators that he had removed the orange tip, the safety tip, that the gun had come with. And we have the model that had been purchased at a local Walmart. And you'll see that, as purchased, this airsoft pistol should have had that orange safety tip to hopefully alert officers that this, in fact, was a toy. But the pistol that Tamir had that day had no such tip.
Prosecutors also emphasized that the officers thought Tamir Rice looked older than his age and responded in line with the rules on active shooter situations. But as has been asked so often in a series of killings of unarmed African Americans by police, the question remains, would Tamir Rice be alive today if his skin was white? For more, we're joined by three guests. In Cleveland, Latonya Goldsby is with us. She's Tamir Rice's cousin. Also there, Elle Hearns, an organizer with Black Lives Matter Cleveland. And joining us by Democracy Now! Video stream is Billy Joe Mills, one of the attorneys representing the Tamir Rice family. Latonya, let's go to you first. First of all, our condolences, although this death took place over a year ago. I know you are reliving this today. Can you respond to the grand jury's non-indictment of the officers?
Yes, thank you for your condolences. It's truly appreciated. We're in shock. We're totally in shock. We can't believe that this decision came down the way it did. Although we have seen other cases around the country where it has been a non-indictment, we still had hope that there would be some type of resolution or an indictment or an arrest of these officers for the actions that were taken that day when they killed Tamir.
What are you calling for now?
Now our call is for the officers to be arrested and for somehow, or to be fired. We're still looking for Loretta Lynch to step in and intervene and to see if there is some type of resolution that can be made as far as these officers actually facing charges.
Latonya, can you go back to that day? Now, you weren't at the park, but at this point, what you understood took place.
Yes. I got the call about what happened, and it was actually a couple of hours after Tamir had already been rushed to the emergency room when we found out that this was actually our little 12-year-old cousin that had been shot by the police. That day was just very chaotic. There was no answers, no questions as to what had happened that day. We still don't know what happened. All we know is that Tamir was playing in the park and he was shot by the police. Later in the video that was released, we seen what had taken place. He never even stood a chance. In less than 1 second, he was approached and he was shot within that 1 second. So there was never any chance for survival or for him to be actually questioned about what he was doing at the park or anything.
In January, Tamir's 14-year-old sister, your cousin Tajaj, spoke on the Today Show about how after the shooting, she ran to Tamir, but the police tackled her to the ground, then handcuffed her and placed her in the cruiser, feet from her dying brother. This is what she said.
I ran to the gazebo, and I couldn't get there all the way to him because the officer attacked me, threw me on the ground, tackled me on the ground, put me in handcuffs, and put me in the back of the police car right next to his body.
How is Tajaj today, Latonya?
Tajay is doing as well as could be expected. She lost her 12-year-old brother. We have just went through Christmas, his mom's birthday, Thanksgiving without him. It's very hard, it's difficult to actually have to watch his murder play out over TV every day, the video just replaying constantly. You see his last few moments of life in that video. So it's been very hard, but she's dealing.
Billy Joe Mills, you're one of the attorneys for the family. The prosecutor says that when you look carefully at the video, that Tamir Rice was actually reaching to get the gun. He said maybe he was actually going to give it to the police officers, but that's not what the police officers thought. Your response to the grand jury decision and the prosecutor being very clear in recommending non-indictment, saying it was a perfect storm.
Emphasize that I think, and the family's attorneys think, that he is part of that perfect storm of human error. He's contributing to the injustice by creating a 400-day investigation and essentially cover-up that allowed him time to find experts that would say this shooting was justified, to find grand jury members that essentially what they do is they control the entire process, the way that the information is presented. And so what's very interesting, you just mentioned that McGinty talked about the way that Tamir was pulling on the gun or touching the gun as the officers arrived. But the experts that McGinty hired himself said and admit in their report that that is unclear. And then we presented evidence. The family took the step of presenting
Billy Joe Mills,
experts,
we're going to reconnect with you to get a better quality sound. We're going to go to break and then come back. Billy Joe Mills is one of the attorneys for the Tamir Rice family. We're also joined by Tamir's cousin, Latonya Goldsby. And Elle Hearns will also speak to us, one of the organizers of Black Lives Matter Cleveland. Stay with us. Hi, I'm Amy Goodman. I want to thank you for tuning in to Democracy Now! We are so grateful to our fans and followers for being a part of the daily conversation. By choosing a news source that's committed to the truth, you're carrying the message of independent media, reaching hundreds of thousands of people every day. In these times of war and elections, we need a media not sponsored by corporations that profit from war, but a media that's truly independent, funded by you. Democracy Now! Is not paid for by the weapons manufacturers, the insurance industry, or the oil, gas, coal, or nuclear companies. We don't take advertising or corporate underwriting dollars. That means we rely on your donations to make our daily independent news hour possible. We need your support today to keep bringing you the hard-hitting, in-depth reporting you've come to expect 5 days a week. Visit democracynow.org, or you can call 888-999-3877. That's 888-999-3877 to make your holiday gift to Democracy Now! Today. Thanks so much for sharing Democracy Now! Stories all year long.